just taken, I think it was just a few days after the inauguration. And when he took the oath of office, he actually came in with the biggest majority of his party on his side of any president since the 1970s. Now, 1 year later, after the result of one special election in Massachusetts, we see that the Democratic Party is reeling. There's a lot of talk in the media that they're falling apart. Although their majorities are still intact, they still have huge congressional majorities on both sides of Congress. The Democratic leaders are looking like headless chickens running around, not sure what to do. They seem unable to figure out what to do with health care, which is the thing they spent the last year on. It's to find their year's work. So now they face the possibility of either voting for a lousy corporate giveaway health care bill or doing nothing and then explaining for the next year why they spent all the time doing nothing while there was a huge demand for decisive action around jobs and other in health care. Obama came to office with the biggest opportunity since Ronald Reagan, probably, to change and reset American politics, to actually reverse what Reagan had set in motion. But as a creature of the U.S. political establishment, as other folks have already mentioned, he was always deferential to the conventional wisdom and its many purveyors in Washington and in the media. And from the start, there was always a tension between the new possibilities that many people who voted for him hoped he would embody and the old assumptions that he and many of the people that he appointed shared. And so that it was pretty clear that even a year ago that many of the opportunities for change that Obama promised would be derailed. Now, much of the Democrats' failures have to do with the obvious question: the devastation of the recession, 10% unemployment, the foreclosure crisis, budget cuts, and the like. Any party that was in power under those circumstances would lose support. But if the Democrats had been perceived as trying to help ordinary people while the Republicans stonewalled any relief, I mean, the public would probably at least give them credit for trying. If they had launched a bold jobs program, or if they had actually delivered a genuine health care plan, they would have at least provided an answer to critics that they said that they've ignored the public's needs. And I have no doubt that if they had done either one of those things, they would be wildly popular today. But the Democrats, being a pro-business party at root, didn't take those measures, despite, as Matt noted, there were plenty of people advising them that they had to take decisive action. They turned the health care reform legislation into a giveaway to the medical, pharma, insurance complex. Their congressional committees are the ones now run by people like Bonnie Frank, who has a great reputation of being a liberal, but they're the ones who are watering down the financial reform proposals right now. They're the ones that are ignoring and let die the Employee Free Choice Act that would allow people the right to organize unions much more easily than they currently have. They're the ones who, with bipartisan support, that old buzzword, bipartisanship, who passed the Stupak Amendment, the anti-abortion amendment to the health care bill. And they're the ones who have let the Neanderthal Republicans dictate their ability to get legislation through the Congress. They even let the GOP stonewall for about 4 to 6 weeks unemployment benefits for more than a month. Now, as a result, Obama has obviously been much slower to deliver on the change than the people who, or not at all, in many cases, than the people who voted for him expected that they would get when they voted for him last year, or 2 years ago, I guess. After tailoring his 2008 campaign and his appeal to, quote, the middle class, who was fed up with Washington self-dealers and Wall Street fat cats, whose recklessness had helped to actually wreck the economy, he and the Democrats have shown themselves to be quite cozy with the lobbyists and banksters. Moreover, Obama's attempts to stress political consensus, that is, to appease conservatives, whether it's on the delayed closure of Guantanamo, or the promises to expand nuclear power, or offshore oil drilling, or a number of other things we could mention, has had a similar effect. It hasn't really got him any support. It's like bloody bait to a school of sharks. The conservatives only just demand more. They're never satisfied. Now, if Obama and the Democrats continue down that path, they are setting themselves up for a shellacking in the 2010 elections. And given the two-party setup of the way the American politics works, where voters get their chance to, every 2 years to either ratify the status quo or to throw the bums out, it doesn't matter that the GOP's politics are terrible and their ideology is disastrous for working people. The Democratic bums are the ones who are going to get tossed out in 2010. Now, a GOP victory, should it come to pass, and I'm not necessarily predicting that it will happen, but it's a lot likelier today than it was a year ago. But a GOP victory would not mean, and I want to underline that, would not mean that the majority of the population has suddenly moved to accept the loopy conspiracy theories of Fox News' Glenn Beck, or to believe that Obama is trying to force a socialist agenda down their throats. But in an atmosphere of economic devastation, when sharp action was demanded, if there is a perception that the government is not doing enough to help, it's easy for millions to vote for the other people, the other party, to show their displeasure with the Democrats, to vote for the Republicans, to show them their displeasure with the Democrats who are running the government. Now, most people who aren't part of the Tea Party fringe, but people who aren't so ideologically committed to a right-wing program or conservative agenda can end up voting for the conservatives anyway. I mean, one out of five Obama voters voted for Brown in the election in Massachusetts. I mean, the reasons are simple. I mean, first, there's usually only two choices on the ballot, right? The Democrats' failures have actually opened a political vacuum that the Republicans and the Tea Party types are trying to fill. And second, when the Democrats haven't delivered, and worse now, they look like they're not even sure what they're doing, why should anyone vote for them? In the two-party system, the Democrats have traditionally played the role of the party, at least since the 30s, have played the role of the party that provides a kind of outlet where workers, the poor, other oppressed groups such as women or racial minorities, LGBT people, can go in the ballot box and mark a ballot and can feel that that's the party that sort of pays attention to them.